The night was dark, the forest silent except for the whisper of leaves. A cold wind moved between the trees, carrying with it an uneasy feeling. Most people in the small town stayed inside at this hour, but one man walked alone with a flashlight. In his hand, his name was Daniel, an ordinary human, yet tonight nothing in his life would remain ordinary. Daniel had heard strange reports, lights in the forest, sounds like crying, missing hikers who never returned. The police said it was nothing, maybe wild animals, maybe lost tourists. But Daniel was curious, and also kind. He wanted to know if someone needed help. So he entered the forest, deeper and deeper, every step making the night feel heavier. The beam of his flashlight cut through the darkness. The trees stood tall like silent guards, their branches scratching against each other. Suddenly he heard it, a sound so soft he thought. It was the wind at first, a whimper, then a cry, high-pitched and frightened, not the sound of any animal he knew, but the sound of children. Daniel's heart beat faster. He followed the sound, pushing aside branches, stepping over roots. Then he saw something strange, a faint glow on the ground ahead, like silver dust, spread over the earth. The crying grew louder as he moved closer, and then his light found them. Two small figures curled together at the base of a fallen tree. At first, Daniel thought they were children lost in the forest, but when he looked closer, his breath caught in his throat. Their skin was pale but glowed faintly, like moonlight trapped under their skin. Their eyes were large, far too large, for human faces, shining like pools of liquid silver. Their hair was thin and delicate, shimmering as if made of threads of light. They were not human. They were something else, something unknown, and they were crying, frightened, shaking in the cold night. Daniel froze, his mind racing. Should he run? Should he call someone? Or should he help them? He remembered the way the cries had pierced the silence, the way their small hands clung to each other. They were children, no matter where they came from, and children needed protection. He crouched down slowly, holding out his hands to show he had no weapon. The two alien girls stared at him with wide, glowing eyes. One tried to speak, her voice broken and soft. Words strange, not English, not any language Daniel knew. But then, between the strange syllables, one word came clear. "Help," she whispered, her voice trembling. Daniel's chest tightened. He nodded quickly. "Yes, help," he said softly. He removed his jacket and wrapped it around them. The girls shivered but did not pull away. One of them leaned against his arm, too weak to sit up straight. Their small bodies were warmer than he expected, glowing faintly under the cloth. Daniel lifted them carefully, one in each arm, surprised at how light they were, almost weightless. He looked around the dark forest. Every shadow now felt dangerous. If they were here, then who had left them and who might be searching for them now? The wind carried a sound through the trees, low and humming. Daniel stopped, his breath frozen. It was not the sound of any car, nor the cry of any animal. It was a strange vibration, like metal grinding softly in the air. The alien girls pressed their faces against him, trembling harder, as if they knew that sound too well. Daniel hurried, moving quickly through the forest, his flashlight bobbing with each step. Branches tore at his arms, roots caught his boots, but he did not stop. He needed to get them out, away from whatever was making that sound. The humming grew louder, closer, as if something heavy moved above the trees. He dared to glance up, and for just a second, he saw a shape, huge, dark, blocking the stars. Then it vanished into the clouds, silent again. But the fear in his chest only grew. Finally, he reached the edge of the forest, his small cabin light glowing in the distance. The girls clung to him tighter as if they felt safer near the human lights. He pushed the door open with his shoulder, carried them inside and laid them on his old couch. They curled together, whispering in their strange language, their silver eyes watching him with trust and fear mixed together. Daniel stood over them, breathing hard, trying to understand. Who were they, why were they here, and what had he just seen in the sky? But one thing he knew, stronger than fear. These children needed him, and he could not abandon them as he pulled. The blanket over their small, glowing bodies, he did not notice the shadow moving outside the cabin. The forest was no longer empty, and someone, or something, was already searching for the lost girls. The night passed slowly in Daniel's cabin. The fire in the corner gave soft light, but the man could not sleep. Each time he closed his eyes, he heard the faint hum of that strange ship in the forest. Each time he looked at the couch, he saw the two alien girls breathing softly under his blanket, glowing faintly like stars fallen into his home. He sat on the chair with his head in his hands, thinking, what had he done? What danger had he brought into his life? But then he remembered their voices, the way one of them whispered, "Help." They were only children, frightened and alone. He could not abandon them now. At dawn, a weak cry woke him. The younger girl sat up shivering, her silver eyes filled with tears. Daniel hurried to the kitchen, searching his shelves. He found bread, some fruit, and a bottle of milk. He placed the food on the table in front of them, hoping they would understand. The girls looked at the bread with confusion. One sniffed it, poked it with her glowing fingers, then pulled back as if it might bite her. Daniel smiled gently. He broke a piece of bread, took a small bite, and chewed slowly. Then he offered the rest to them after a long pause. The older girl reached out with trembling hands, took the bread, and nibbled. Her eyes widened. The taste was strange but soft. Soon both girls were eating carefully, drinking milk in small sips. For the first time since he found them, Daniel saw a hint of peace on their faces. Still, their fear did not fade completely. When the wind outside howled, they clung to each other. When the floor creaked, they looked around with panic in their glowing eyes. Daniel realized they must have been running, hiding for days, maybe even longer. Who had hunted them, and why? Later, he brought them warm water to clean their faces and hands. As he touched the younger girl's arm, something strange happened. The glowing marks on her skin pulsed softly, spreading light like moving rivers under her flesh. The older sister gasped, pulling her back, her silver eyes sharp with warning. But Daniel lifted his hands, showing no harm, speaking softly. "It's okay. Safe. Safe here." The light faded and the older sister relaxed, but only a little. They did not speak English, but slowly, through gestures and small words, they began to understand. The younger girl learned water, food, and safe. The older one repeated the word home again and again, her voice heavy with longing. Each time she said it, she looked toward the forest. Daniel guessed their mother, maybe their whole family, was still out there somewhere. But he also knew the forest was not safe, not after the shadow of that ship. That afternoon, Daniel stepped outside to chop wood. The forest looked quiet, yet something in the air felt wrong. A black vehicle passed slowly on the road, windows dark, moving without sound. Daniel hid behind the fence. His heart racing, the vehicle did not stop, but he felt certain it was searching for something, or someone. When he returned to the cabin, he found the two girls huddled in fear, their eyes glowing brighter than before. They pointed toward the window, whispering words he could not understand. Daniel realized they had sensed the same danger, maybe even before he saw it. They were not only different in body, but also in spirit. They could feel things humans could not. That night, as the girls slept, Daniel sat by the fire again. He thought of his small, quiet life, the routine days of work and rest. Now everything had changed. His cabin was no longer just his home. It was their shelter. He wondered if he could protect them. He wondered if he should try to contact the authorities. But deep in his heart, he knew the truth. If he gave them up, they would not be safe. They would be taken, studied, or worse. He could not let that happen. The older girl stirred in her sleep, whispering words in her strange tongue. One word was clear, sharp, and filled with emotion. "Mother," she said softly, her silver eyes opening for just a second before closing again. Daniel froze, the word echoing in his mind. If their mother was coming, then everything would change soon. But the question burned in his chest. Would her arrival bring safety for her daughters, or greater danger for them all? The night was heavy with silence. Daniel could not rest, his mind turning with worry. The two alien girls slept on the couch, their glowing bodies curled together like fragile candles in the dark. Outside, the forest whispered with secrets. The kind of whispers that made even brave men uneasy. Every sound caught Daniel's ear. The cry of an owl, the creak of branches, the soft push of the wind. He felt as if the forest was waiting, holding its breath. The girls had whispered one word again and again, "Mother." But Daniel did not know if this mother would be a gentle savior or something far more terrifying. Just before dawn, it happened. The earth trembled lightly, a vibration that shook the glasses in his small cabin. Daniel rushed to the window, his eyes wide. Through the trees he saw light, pale and otherworldly, moving across the forest floor. It was not the headlights of a car, not the lamp of a search party. This light came from above, shining down in wide beams that swept through the forest like searching eyes. Daniel's heart pounded. He turned toward the girls. They were already awake, standing by the window, their glowing eyes reflecting the strange light. They whispered, in their own tongue, words too fast for Daniel to understand, but he understood their faces, hope, fear, and something deeper. They knew who was coming. Daniel grabbed his coat and stepped outside, the cold air biting his skin. The light above grew brighter, the humming sound filling the night like a low storm. The trees bent under a sudden gust of wind. And then Daniel saw it. A ship, vast and sleek, lowering itself between the trees. It moved with silent grace, metal shining with colors he had no name for. It looked alive, not built, but grown, its surface pulsing faintly like skin over muscle. The ground shook as it landed, and Daniel's courage faltered. Should he run, should he hide the children, or should he face what came? Before he could decide, the ship's side opened with a slow hiss. A ramp extended and a tall figure stepped out. She was unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. Her body was tall and slender, covered in armor that shimmered like liquid silver. Her face was sharp, but beautiful, her eyes glowing the same way as her daughter's. But it was not her appearance that froze Daniel. It was the feeling that came with her. Power heavy and overwhelming, like standing before a storm. The two girls rushed past Daniel, calling out in their strange tongue. Their voices were filled with joy, tears glimmering in their glowing eyes. The tall alien woman dropped to one knee, gathering them into her arms. Her armor dimmed as she touched them, her face softening. For a moment, Daniel saw not a warrior, not an alien, but simply a mother. When she lifted her gaze to him, Daniel's breath caught. Her eyes burned with questions and suspicion, yet behind the hardness there was gratitude. She stepped forward, her daughters clinging to her, and stopped just a few feet away. Daniel raised his hands slowly, showing peace. He whispered, "I helped them," though he did not know if she understood. The alien mother tilted her head, her glowing eyes scanning him from head to toe. Then, in a voice low and strange but clear, she spoke. "Human, protector." Daniel blinked in shock. She knew his language, at least a little. The alien woman pressed her hand against her chest and lowered her head, a bow, not of weakness, but of deep respect. Daniel did not know what to say, his chest, heavy with confusion and awe, but the moment did not last. The forest trembled again, louder this time. Another sound filled the air, not the soft hum of her ship, but a harsh growl, sharp and threatening. The alien mother stiffened, pulling. Her daughters behind her, her eyes scanning the sky. Daniel looked up, his stomach twisting with dread. From the clouds above, another ship descended, darker, heavier, its edges sharp like blades. Unlike the first, this one looked cruel, its lights burning red as if it carried war itself. The air grew hotter, the ground shuddered as it hovered low. Daniel felt his throat tighten. This was no rescue. This was danger. The alien mother turned to Daniel, her face hard again, her hand glowing with strange energy. Her daughters clutched at her armor, their glowing eyes wide with terror. Daniel realized the truth. Her arrival was not the end of their danger, but only the beginning. The hostile ship's lights fixed on the cabin, beams of red cutting through the trees. A voice echoed from above, metallic and cruel. "Give them to us, or be destroyed." The alien mother stepped forward, her body glowing with power. Daniel stood frozen, fear pounding in his chest. The forest that had once been quiet was now a battlefield waiting to begin. And in that moment, Daniel knew his life was tied to theirs. The story of fear and care was about to change into a story of war. The second ship hovered above the forest like a predator. Its red lights cut through the trees, casting shadows that looked like claws reaching across the ground. The air shook with its power. The ground quivered beneath Daniel's boots. This was not rescue. This was the arrival of hunters. The alien mother stood tall, her silver armor glowing faintly. Her daughters pressed tightly behind her legs. Her glowing eyes narrowed as she watched the dark ship. Daniel stood beside her cabin door, his hands trembling. He had never seen war, never faced such terror, yet now danger had come to his doorstep. From the belly of the hostile ship, figures descended. They were tall and armored, but unlike the mother's graceful silver, theirs was jagged, dark, and cruel. Their helmets glowed with red slits, their weapons heavy and sharp. There were 6 of them, moving with perfect order. They stepped onto the ground with a thud that shook the earth. The leader raised a weapon that crackled with energy. His voice came through a device deep and metallic. "Return the children," he said. "They belong to us." Daniel's blood turned cold. He looked at the mother. Her jaw tightened, her hands glowing with power that shimmered like lightning. Under her skin, the girls whimpered, clinging tighter to her. Daniel could see the truth in their eyes. They were terrified of these beings. Whoever these hunters were, they were the reason the children had run. The alien mother stepped forward, her voice strong, though Daniel could not understand the language. She spoke quickly, her words sharp. Like blades, the hunters only laughed, their cruel sound cutting the night. One of them pointed his weapon at Daniel. The leader's voice boomed again. "Give us the human, or we take the children by force." Daniel's heart thundered in his chest. He wanted to hide, to run, but something inside him refused. He had carried those girls from the forest, fed them, kept them warm. Now these monsters wanted to use him. As a bargaining chip, he stepped forward, his voice shaking but steady. "No," he said, "you will not take them." The hunters turned their red eyes toward him. The leader tilted his head, then laughed again, a cruel metallic echo. "A fragile human defies us," he sneered. "Then you will die first." The weapon lifted, its energy crackling. Daniel froze, his breath caught. But before the shot came, the alien mother moved, her hand raised high, a shield of silver light bursting into the air. The blast struck it with a roar. But the shield held, shimmering like glass struck by fire. The hunters stepped back, surprised. The mother growled something fierce, her voice filled with rage. She pushed her daughters behind Daniel, as if trusting him for their safety. Then she moved forward, her armor glowing brighter, her power rising like a storm. Daniel could hardly believe his eyes. The air shimmered with energy around her, the ground vibrating beneath her feet. Yet even with her strength, there were 6 enemies, their weapons charged, their movements sharp. This was not a battle she could fight alone. Daniel's mind raced. He had no weapon, no training, but he had his cabin. He darted inside, pulling open drawers, grabbing what he could, an old hunting rifle, a flare gun, and a box of tools. He returned outside, his hands shaking but his heart firm. He would fight in any way he could. The hunters moved forward in formation, their leader shouting commands. One raised a device, scanning the girls, and its screen glowed with strange symbols. Daniel realized the truth. They were not just children to these beings. They were valuable, hunted for something within them, something rare. The alien mother struck first. She raised her arms, sending a wave of silver energy crashing forward. The ground split, trees cracked, and one of the hunters flew back with a scream. The others countered, their weapons firing bolts of red fire. The forest lit up like a storm of light and sound. Daniel fired the flare gun, the burning light hitting a hunter's chest and forcing him back. The rifle shots echoed, though. They barely dented the armor. Still, Daniel's courage stunned the hunters. A fragile human standing beside one of the most powerful beings they had ever fought. It made them hesitate, even if only for a breath. The leader growled, his weapon glowing hotter. He pointed it at the cabin, at the children inside. "If we cannot take them," he roared, "then Earth will burn with them." Daniel's blood ran cold. The mother's face turned pale with fury. The children screamed, their glowing eyes flooding with light. The ground trembled harder. The air split. With energy, the true battle was about to begin. The air burned with red and silver light. The forest had become a battlefield. Trees cracked and splintered as blasts of alien fire tore through the night. The ground shook with every strike, and smoke curled through the cabin walls. Daniel coughed. His rifle gripped tightly in his hands. The alien mother stood at the center of the chaos, her body glowing like a storm contained in flesh. Each movement she made created waves of energy, shields that blocked blasts, strikes that sent hunters flying. Yet for every enemy she pushed back, another stepped forward, stronger, more relentless. The children clung to Daniel's side, their small glowing hands shaking as they held onto his coat. Their silver eyes wide with terror. Daniel wanted to protect them, but his heart hammered with fear. He was only a man with an old rifle and a few flares. What could he do against warriors who traveled through the stars? The leader of the hunters laughed, his metallic voice echoing through the clearing. "Even with your strength," he shouted at the mother, "you cannot win." He turned his weapon toward Daniel, his red visor burning like fire. "Give us the human and we may let you keep your children." The mother froze, her eyes flicking to Daniel. For a moment he saw it, the choice, the temptation. If she gave him up, maybe her daughters would live, but Daniel shook his head firmly, his jaw tight. He knew what must be done. "No," Daniel said, his voice steady though his body trembled. "You'll have to take me by force." The hunters aimed their weapons, red fire building at their tips. The mother roared, her shield flashing up around him. But Daniel broke free, stepping past it, raising his rifle. He fired. The sound of the shot lost in the storm of alien power. The bullet sparked against armor, useless against the metal skin. But Daniel kept firing, forcing them to turn their focus on him instead of the children. The leader snarled, energy crackling. From his weapon, he charged it fully, aiming straight at Daniel's chest. Daniel felt the heat burning his skin even before it fired. Yet he stood tall, his heart beating with only one thought. If he could buy the girls one more second, it would be enough. The shot came. A blazing spear of red light. Daniel braced for death, but in the instant before it struck, the alien mother threw herself forward, her shield shattered under the power, sparks exploding into the air. The blast hit her armor, sending her crashing into the earth with a scream. The daughters cried out, their glowing eyes flooding with tears. Daniel dropped to his knees beside her, his hands shaking, her armor smoked, cracked, but her eyes still burned. She gritted her teeth and whispered a single word to him. "Protect." Daniel swallowed hard, his fear melting into something else. Not strength, not power, but courage. He stood, facing the hunters who laughed at his weakness. To them, he was nothing. But to the children, he was everything. He shouted, his voice breaking through the noise of war. "You want them, you'll have to go through me." The hunters moved forward, their weapons raised. Daniel's rifle clicked empty, but he did not run. He grabbed a flare, lit it, and threw it at their feet, the burst of light blinding their sensors for a moment. Then he grabbed an axe from the woodpile, the handle rough in his hands. He charged with a cry, swinging it with all his strength. The axe bit into one hunter's arm joint, sparks flying. The alien howled, staggering back. Another hunter struck him across the chest, the force throwing him to the ground. Pain shot through Daniel's body, but he rolled, gasping, his hands gripping the axe again. He rose to his knees, blood on his lips, but his eyes burning with fire. The alien mother watched, her own strength returning slowly. Her daughters screamed, not in fear this time, but in desperate encouragement. Their glowing hands pressed together, and suddenly, a wave of silver light surged from them. It washed over Daniel like warmth, his pain lessening, his strength returning for one last stand. He lifted the axe again, charging the leader. The alien raised his weapon, red light building for a final strike. But Daniel swung with all his will, the blade striking the weapon itself. The weapon cracked, sparks flying as the leader staggered. The shot went wild, striking a tree and splitting it in half. The mother rose behind Daniel, her power blazing brighter than ever. She unleashed a storm of silver energy, crashing into the hunters like a tidal wave. One by one they fell, thrown back into the shadows, their screams fading into the night. Silence followed, broken only by Daniel's ragged breaths. He dropped the axe, his knees giving out. The children rushed to him, their small arms wrapping around his shoulders, their silver eyes filled with tears. The mother stood tall again, her armor glowing faintly, her gaze fixed on the human who had risked everything. For the first time, her eyes softened, not with suspicion, but with respect. She whispered, "Strange human. Brave," but the forest was still glowing red. Above the trees, the hostile ship charged its great weapon, its light gathering like a rising sun of destruction. This fight was not over. It was only growing more deadly. The sky glowed with red. Fire. The hostile ship above the forest charged its great weapon, the light growing brighter with every second. Daniel could feel the heat on his skin, the air trembling as if the world itself was about to break. The alien mother stood firm, her silver armor cracked but glowing, her daughters clutching her legs in terror. Daniel staggered to his feet, his chest aching, his breath short. He had fought with all his strength, yet it was not enough. The hunters on the ground were broken, thrown back by the mother's storm, but the ship still hovered, alive, dangerous, unstoppable. One strike from it could erase the cabin, the forest, maybe the whole town beyond. The alien mother lifted her hands, silver light rising again. But Daniel could see the truth. She was weakening, her body shaking, her power fading. Her daughters cried, whispering in their strange language, begging her not to fall. Daniel clenched his fists, his heart pounding. He could not let it end this way. He looked at the flare gun still in his pocket, at the broken tools near his feet. Small things, human things. Yet they were all he had. He raised the flare gun, aimed at the sky and fired. The burst of white fire shot upward, striking the underbelly of the ship. It did no damage, but it caught the ship's attention. The red beam turned from the cabin to him, locking onto his chest. Daniel stood his, ground sweat dripping down his face, his legs shaking. He whispered to himself, "If it saves them, it's worth it." The weapon fired, a blazing stream of destruction. The ground split, the trees bent, and Daniel was thrown backward, his body crashing into the dirt. Pain exploded through him, burning his chest, stealing his breath. The world spun, his vision darkened. The alien mother screamed, her voice filled with fury and grief. She ran to him, falling to her knees, her hands glowing as she pressed them to his wound. Her daughters sobbed, their small, glowing hands joining hers. Silver light poured into Daniel's body, rushing through his veins like fire and ice. Daniel gasped, his eyes opening. The pain dulled, replaced by warmth, a strange humming inside his chest. When he looked down, he saw it. A mark, glowing faintly. On his arm it was a pattern of light, moving slowly like liquid silver under his skin. The alien mother looked at him with shock, then awe. Her voice was softer now, heavy with meaning. "You are chosen," she whispered. Daniel blinked, confusion filling his mind. "I don't understand," he whispered back, his voice weak. The mother's eyes softened, her armor dimming as she leaned closer. "My people," she said slowly, her English broken but clear, "do not share power. Never. But you, brave. Protect children. Bond." She touched the glowing mark on his arm, her fingers gentle. "This is gift," she said. "Rare, forever." Daniel stared at the light under his skin. He felt stronger, not just in his body, but in his spirit. It was as if something ancient, something beyond human, now lived within him. A bond, not of blood, but of sacrifice. The ship above roared again, but its light began to fade. Smoke trailed from its engines, cracks glowing on its dark surface. The mother had struck it in her fury when Daniel fell, her last storm of power ripping into its core. Now it faltered, pulling back into the sky, retreating into the clouds. The danger had passed for now. The forest fell silent, the only sound the soft sobs of the children and Daniel's ragged breaths. The mother helped him sit up. Her strength, still fierce though her eyes showed exhaustion, the daughters hugged him tightly, their small voices calling him a word he did not understand. But from the tone, from the way they held him, Daniel knew what it meant. Protector. He swallowed hard, emotion filling his chest. He had never asked for this, never imagined such a night. Yet here he was, marked by another world, trusted by a mother not of his kind, loved by children who glowed like stars. The mother stood slowly, lifting her daughters. Into her arms she turned to Daniel one last time, her eyes glowing softly in the dawn light. She spoke words that made his heart tighten. This bond. We'll call you again. One day, when Galaxy needs human courage. Daniel stared at her, his chest heavy. He wanted to ask what she meant, what would come, but no words came. He only nodded, his hand pressed over the glowing mark on his arm. The alien mother stepped back, her ship opening behind her. The ramp glowed with silver light, the sound of engines rising. Her daughters reached out toward Daniel, their small fingers brushing his hand. Then, slowly, they were carried inside, their glowing eyes never leaving. The ship lifted, the forest bending under its power. It rose higher, brighter, until it vanished into the clouds, leaving only silence behind. Daniel stood alone, his cabin broken, the ground scarred, his body trembling. But inside his arm, the light still glowed, faint but steady. He knew this was not the end, it was only the beginning. The forest was quiet again. The smoke had cleared, the strange lights were gone, and only the broken cabin stood as proof that the night had been real. Daniel leaned against the doorway, his body aching, his arm still glowing faintly with the strange silver mark. The silence felt heavy, not peaceful but waiting. He looked at the sky where the ship had vanished. The mother and her daughters were gone. The bond still burned under his skin, a reminder that their world had touched his. Daniel had lived his whole life in shadows of ordinary days. Now he knew he was part of something far greater, something he did not yet understand. The days that followed were strange. Daniel repaired the cabin, replaced broken windows and fixed shattered walls. To the neighbors in town, he said a storm had damaged his home. They nodded, not questioning, but he saw the way they looked at him. Somehow they knew he was different. Though they could not say why, at night he could not sleep. Dreams filled his mind. Stars burning across endless skies. Worlds with colors he had never seen. Voices calling in languages he did not know. Each time he woke, the mark on his arm glowed brighter, humming softly like a heartbeat that was not his own. Sometimes when he walked through the forest, he felt it again, that same vibration in the air, faint but real. The sense of being watched, not by enemies but by something vast and unseen. It did not frighten him, not anymore. It made him wonder how small Earth really was in the ocean of stars. One evening he stood by the lake near his cabin. The water reflected the setting sun, and he felt the mark pulsing again. He lifted his sleeve and stared at it. Silver lines, moving like rivers under his skin. It was not fading, it was growing. He touched it and whispered, "What are you turning me into?" The answer came not in words, but in a memory that was not his. He saw the alien mother standing tall in her silver armor. He heard her voice, strong and soft. "This bond that will call you again." One day, Daniel shivered, not from cold but from the weight of her words. The galaxy would need him, a human. But why, and when, he did not know. Weeks passed, but the strangeness never left. Animals came near his cabin more often, their eyes calm instead of wild. Birds landed on the porch unafraid of him. Even the wolves that roamed the woods kept their distance, bowing their heads before fading back into the trees. It was as if nature itself felt the change in him. The bond was not just with the alien family, it was with something greater, something alive in the universe. One night, Daniel sat by the fire, the world outside quiet. Suddenly, the cabin shook, not from wind, but from a sound he knew too well. A hum, low and steady, filling the air. His heart raced. He ran to the window, pulling aside the curtain. In the sky above the forest, lights appeared again. Not red and cruel like the hunters, but silver and soft, moving in silent patterns. Daniel stepped outside, the cold night air filling his lungs. The lights hovered, distant but clear, as if they were watching him. He felt the mark on his arm burn hotter, glowing so bright it lit the ground. The same feeling from that night returned, the sense that he was no longer ordinary, no longer just a man in a cabin. He was something more, something chosen. He whispered into the night, "I am ready," though he did not know what for. The lights pulsed once, then slowly faded into the sky, leaving only the stars. Daniel stood there a long time, his hand over the glowing mark. He felt peace, but also a promise. The mother's words echoed in his heart. "This bond will call you again." And deep down, Daniel knew the truth. This was not the end of his story. It was only the first chapter of something much greater. One day the stars would come for him, and when they did, he would not be afraid.